Nicky, let's talk a bit about Might Bite. A slightly below par term last season, but how confident are you that he can almost sort of get his mojo back?
Well, it was a very below par season, to be honest with you, because the year before he'd done everything right, terrific run in the Gold Cup, and a tough race. And the interesting thing was that it was one of those years when we had 4 weeks to Aintree, and of all the Cheltenham horses, he was the one that Altior and Birchdale definitely said no to Aintree, and Might Bite, who probably had the hardest race of them all, said, I'm fine, let's go. And he was brilliant at Aintree. So I don't think it was the fact that Cheltenham had taken it out of him or bottomed him in any way, which it often can do, because he bounced back so well at Aintree that year. Then last year it was bitterly disappointing. We started in Haydock, and there were very big fences that day, and he went and gave the first a real nudge, and it seemed to unsettle him, because his jumping is his biggest weapon, really. Just bowling along and jumping, and he was never doing anything. He wasn't going to win after a mile. And to be honest with you, he wasn't going to win anything after a mile all of last season. It was a disaster. We've done everything we can. There's not an awful lot you can do, and there's nothing wrong. We can't find anything wrong. So there's not an awful lot you can do. We have tinkered with this and that, yes. We didn't come across anything blatantly obvious. So we've just got to hope. It's a bit like when we were trying to get Sprinter back. It's just trying to get his confidence back. So we're trying to make everything nice and easy for him, and hopefully he gets to enjoy himself. He schooled this morning, and he's in good form.
It's been mooted that perhaps he may step back down in trip. Is that a possibility?
Well, Nico's keen to come back in trip, but I don't. Look, we discuss these things and we normally agree with each other. I just don't see that a horse that's made the running like he did in a Gold Cup or a King George or around Aintree and goes a really good gallop, and all he's done is go further and further away from them, that he actually wants to come back to a shorter distance. Anyway, we'll see. We haven't decided where we're going to start. It will start when he says he wants to start.
Santini ran a gallant race in the RSA, just going down to top of the game. You skipped Aintree, that was purposely, put him away for a brand new season. How's he summered?
He summered well, he looks great. He had a very bizarre season, to be honest with you. He won, but he was very good the first time at Newbury. Then he got beaten in Kempton in Boxing Day by the Bagawar and top of the game. He finished his race very well. I just don't think Kempton really suited him, and consequently we think he's probably not on the King George shortlist at the moment anyway. He had the most dreadful preparation for Cheltenham. We got caught up in the vaccination disaster in that he was due to run in the Reynoldsdown. He needed more experience. We couldn't run in the Reynoldsdown because we had to revaccinate. And then he had a foot problem. He was lame until, he didn't have a gallop. It was a crazy preparation, but we got him there. His performance under the circumstances was outstanding. And to be fair, actually, by the time we got to Aintree, he was in cracking good form. But Richard just wanted to say, let's take this quietly. And so we'll start quietly, I'd say. Well, I say start quietly. The one thing, there's a nice intermediate chase at Sandown, which we've used in the past. And I think the chances are he'll start there, and we'll try and build him up from there.
OK, Corral Nicky was one of many people's banker at the festival in the National Hunt Chase. Sadly, it didn't go to plan. How's he been since March?
Well, since March, he's been all right. He's had a good summer. He's back, and he's in great form. He looks fantastic. Cheltenham was a tragedy, really. And I'm afraid I go back and I'd say with Santini, I'd say that Fluvac cost him the RSA, and I'd say that the Fluvac cost OK Corral. He, after he had his jab, and these horses, some react completely differently to others. That's why we probably only go on one a year. That's why we got thrown out by this sudden 8-month rule. It took Santini, well, it meant he couldn't get a prep race and everything went wrong. And OK, Corral, he came out with a football on his neck. I mean, he couldn't bend his neck for a fortnight. And I mean, again, we tried to get him back to Cheltenham as best we could, but to be fair, he wasn't, you know.
Do you see him as an out-and-out stayer? Because, of course, that was in the four-miler. Or do you feel that you could bring him back in trip?
I think when you see what he did at Warwick in that Grade 2 novice chase, when Derek O'Connor came over to ride him, because he was going to ride him in the National Hunt Chase, he was seriously impressive. He travelled throughout. He was the winner of the race from after a mile, and Warwick's a relatively easy track, and you need a bit of speed, and he was different class. His jumping and everything was fantastic, and he actually made you question whether he needed the 4 miles. No, I don't think he does. I mean, he'll be 3 miles. Where we actually go, I don't know. I've discussed the Ladbroke a little bit with JP, and there are other races he can. There are lots of places we can go. He's in very good form. He looks great. Yeah, he's quite an old horse for a horse that's actually. But as a young horse, we had a lot of problems with him, and it was perseverance galore on everybody's part. Some great work by veterinaries in England and in Ireland. And summer spent at Martinstown with all sorts of things needed mending. He was just very immature, and finally he had a clean run at it last year, and he looked very good. I think he is, but where he finishes up, he could be anything from a Gold Cup horse to a Grand National horse to I don't know. He's got to stay in one piece as well, so it's in the lap of the gods. Speaking
of Grand Nationals, Beware the Bear. Is he the Seven Barrows candidate for this season?
Well, I feel sorry for him if he is, because after 41 years, it's still a long way away. We've been second a couple of times, but it's not a race we found very easy, as everybody knows. It would be lovely to try and tick that off the box. We've always ridden him, thinking he'd love to be up there. And we've always ridden him to jump out of the gate and be up there. And he is for about 4 or 5 fences, and then he drifts backwards, and after a mile, he's last. And he goes round and round and round again, and then in the last sort of 3/4 of a mile, he suddenly starts passing horses, and he's finishing all his races with a great flourish. But it's always too late. And actually, Jerry gave him a brilliant ride at Cheltenham in the January meeting. But it was a small field, no pace, and he made all. We did have blinkers on for the first time, and he jumped from fence to fence. And so we went on to the handicap at the festival. This time, and it's what I'd always really decided we ought to try and do, instead of jumping out the gate and letting him be up there, come all the way back, and then go back, try and get back to the front. Why don't, if he wants to start at the back, which is what he was saying, just, okay, let's start at the back. And then you haven't wasted all that energy trying to do that to him over the first 4 fences just to finish up at the back. So we rode him completely differently. And again, Jerry gave him a wonderful ride. We weren't in the National, and I think if we had been, we'd have been tempted, especially, with what I'd learnt at Cheltenham. This year we have had a chat about it, and yes, we are going to say that is the objective. You'd have to worry that he'd have quite a lot of weight, but on the other hand, if Tiger Roll does come, then at least it'll, he's, because of what he did at Cheltenham and everything, he was going to finish up with an awful lot of weight. I don't want to put Mr. O'Leary off the idea, but I probably do, because he'll probably just beat us anyway, but at least he'll keep the weights down for a few of us. I'm afraid you might not like it, but I think he will get top weight. Champ was, he probably should have been unbeaten. I have to admit one thing, that I should have swapped them around, him and Birchdale, at Cheltenham, and run Champ in the 3-miler and Birchdale in the 2.5. we'd rather committed ourselves, and I regret not sort of, it was like the way we did it with Bobsworth. We changed our mind on the last day there and switched him into the Albert Bartlett, and that was right. Champ proved, I mean, he was a very good second in the Ballymore, and then he came out and won the Grade 1 at Aintree, and he looked very good. He is a 3-miler. He's an enthusiastic 3-miler. He has schooled over fences. He was a little bit too enthusiastic to start with, and no, he's been very good now. We took him to Warwick the other day, had a school there, and he was very good.
So are you looking at staying over hurdles, or you are going to go
No,
novice
he will
chasing?
go novice chasing. The plan is to go novice chasing. He just, as you know, he was very keen in his, well, sometimes he was, that one day at Newbury he actually just took off with Aidan Coleman in a handicap hurdle and disappeared. I mean, I've never seen anything go so, you'd think he'd done far too much, and he didn't. It was too easy for him.
And Birchdale set to go chasing as well?
Yes, he is. The plan with him is to go novice chasing. He scored very well.
Are you happy for us to go outside, Governor?
Angel's Breath, very highly regarded. How has he summered, and what's the likely season plan for him?
He never comes in looking too fat, and then the next thing is I'm trying to put weight on him, and before I can sort of blink twice, he's put on so much weight, I'm now trying to get it off. But he has schooled very well, touch wood, so far over fence, he's been very good, and the plan is to go novice chasing.
Champagne Platinum.
Same thing. I think he's good. He's a very talented horse. He's jumped very well so far over fences, novice chasing.
Mr. Fisher, beautiful looking horse. He looks destined to go over fences. Would you agree?
He does. I wasn't sure whether he ought to have another season over hurdles, and I said to James Potter, look, let's school him over fences and see what he tells us, and then we'll decide which way to go. The first morning I schooled him, I rang James up at lunchtime. I said, I've already found out which way to go, and that's novice chasing.
What trip likely do you think?
I would think 2.5 could be suiting him well. I do. He's grown a lot. He's a beautiful looking horse, but he definitely grew in the summer. He strengthened up, but he has been jumping fences really well.
Just had a look at Dickie Diver. He's a real big, strong looking horse, and would it be fair to say that whatever he did last season was very much a bonus, because this could be his year?
He looked very, I mean, what he did very, very well. He's had a few problems, probably growing up pains more than anything, because he is just very big. He's a big raw horse, and he loves soft ground, and he stays 3 miles, and he goes novice chasing.
And the horse to your left is actually Precious Cargo, and he is absolutely enormous, isn't he?
He's a very big boy.
He was very sociable a minute ago, but he's gone back in there for his feed now.
Come here. He is. He's a lovely big horse. The one thing he has is a lot of pace, and he definitely go over fences. He's well schooled. Hello. And he's a lot of pace, and I would think he's a 2-miler.
What do you think of his run at Aintree last back end?
That was probably enough for him at that time of the year. He'd been impressive in his 2 runs before that. That was sort of, he just needed to learn a little bit more. But, you've got to grow into that sort of frame, and I suppose he's just done enough for some of that.
Downtown Getaway, what are your thoughts on him?
He is. He's been a hard horse to train a little bit, but he probably ought to be going novice chasing. I'm not sure. I wouldn't like to win a hurdle race on the way, though, but we'll see. And
of all those horses we've just mentioned, which is the one you're most looking forward to sending chasing this year, and that you think can go right to the top over the big ones?
It's a strong squad, and
What's impressed you most when you've seen them score so far?
They have, touch wood, all been very good. This horse has been excellent. Angel's Breath and Mr. Fisher have been very good. To be fair, so far so good. I haven't, I say, apart from Champ trying to be a little bit, just not keen, but I think the bigger the fence you give him, the better, the more he'll respect it. No, so far they've been very good. So I think the nice thing is they cross the spectrum of 3 milers, 2.5 milers, and 2 milers. So we've got hopefully something in all the corners. But you know what it's like. You need all the ammo you can get, and yes, it looks a good squad, but there's an awful lot that can go wrong.